We're with you again, dear ones, when we are with all of you. We are Ananda, we are this being's personal guides and teachers, and we are a collective consciousness. But when we are with you, and in that sense, there are a lot of us with you, what we feel is this increasing frequency of love that you are learning to generate. When you come into separation, you are choosing not love. That is what's happening when you come into separation. Some of the stories that you have about what Earth is are way off track. This is a tremendously challenging chapter in your spirit's evolution. In the non-physical, when somebody is going into Earth's atmosphere, as if you are a space traveler, we are all very impressed with the courage of that person to come into this place. When we are working towards connecting with somebody, as we did with our dear one, we feel the intense separation journey that you have been on, from where we are in our frequency to where you come into your frequency when you're born. It is as if there is a giant funnel, and this is where you start. And when you come into the physical structure, when you come into being born, you are coming down into this pinpoint of narrowness. And it is, for some beings, overwhelmingly painful because it is not love. And when you are struggling here, when you are feeling depressed, when you are feeling lonely, when you are feeling as if you don't belong, it is really, in that last comment, you don't belong here. You belong in that place of expansive love. But because you are free beings, because you are made in the image of God, and you have the right to do whatever you want to do with your time and your energy and your experience, when you come into this place to pursue some of the experiences that you want to have, it takes a focusing down, so to speak. So many of you, when you were children, would have a magnifying glass, and that magnifying glass would pinpoint the sun's rays down into such a tiny, tiny spot that it would ignite fire, ignite paper. So that's really what happens when you come into separation. You come down into this very narrow focused place. Now you come into this very narrow focused place because you want to have experience, and to have experience, you have to be focused. To have experience and new horizons open up to you, you cannot be cluttered with all of the stories of other incarnations, of which you are going to become aware when you have your transition into the non-physical. You will get to see all of your other incarnations. You will get to see all of your alternative selves. You'll get to see so much. It's very, very interesting journey. The reason we're bringing this up right now is because of the intensity of these times. You are having more and more difficulty in remembering this. You're having more and more difficulty in remembering that you are spirit. Now, this dear being has been gifted with a few experiences of tremendous expansion. And throughout your Course in Miracles studies, most of you will have an experience of oneness, where you are completely removed from the limiting beliefs and ideas of the ego mind. And it is in that experience that you will really understand what we are talking about. When our dear one had her oneness experience, she's had a few of them, but there was one that was particularly intense because she was in a deep suffering state when it happened. She was shown the truth. And this is the prayer that she says, and this is the prayer that we would like you to begin to incorporate into your practice, which is, please transform my perception so that I can see the truth. What this does is it takes your ego out of the story. Please transform my perception so that I can see the truth. This is the prayer to say when you are feeling yourself suffering, when you are feeling yourself believing that you have been abandoned by God, that you are alone, that this world is in fact a horrible place. This is the ego's playground. This is the place where you come to play out those things that are not loving. Now, why would you want to do that is the question that many of you have. Why would I want to be in a place that is not loving? Well, we say to you, that's our question to you too. Why would you want to be in a place that's not loving? And what we would say is look at your own thought processes, look at your own beliefs. Whenever you judge or attack somebody, whenever you judge or attack yourself, whenever you are afraid for your body's safety, whenever you feel lonely and alone, you are choosing those thoughts and you are actively choosing to engage in that suffering. Now, most of you don't think that it's a choice because these ideas seem to spring up spontaneously in your mind. But as you become more and more disciplined and trained with the Course in Miracles, you begin to realize truly that when you feel yucky, you have done something unloving. And that is why you are here. You have these aspects of yourself that are unloving, whether it's self-abuse through bad diet or intoxication or negative thinking or being very, very judgmental or being anxious all the time or scared all the time. These are the shadow aspects of yourself that you have come here to work on. So when you feel bad, what happens is when you feel bad, you have done something to yourself that you believe is true. And that is why it's very, very difficult to let go of that feeling bad. Oh, I feel bad because of COVID. If COVID wasn't here, I would feel okay. When you feel bad, what it means is you've looked upon the situation incorrectly. Now, when you have a devastating experience playing out in front of you, whether it's a forest fire or a outbreak of a disease or a famine, for example, those kinds of things, you look at those things and there is nothing in you that says, this is a good thing. There is nothing in you that says, God must want this. Why is this happening? This is one of the fundamental confusions of this place for many of you, is that God has nothing to do with this. This is your playground. This is where all of you have wanted to come to play out your scenarios of fear or judgment or power or lust or gluttony, whatever you want to say, all of these things that you want to figure out. Now, one of the teachings that you have in your society is that God created this world. Now, if God is loving, God would not create a body that dies. That's not loving. That's not eternal. And this is one of those foundational teachings of A Course in Miracles, is that when something is changeable and perishable, it is not of God. It is of the ego's world. It is of the ego's playground. So when you look at yourselves and you see, oh yes, my body is not permanent, it is going to age and eventually get past its useful date, its use by date. What is eternal is the you that observes that. So that consciousness that you have when you come into physical form, that consciousness that goes through childhood and teenage years and young adulthood and into those mature years, and then finally, as you're getting more mature until the body has used up its usefulness in the form that you experience it right now. We always want to add that. Your consciousness on the day of your death is the same consciousness that was on the day of your birth. Yes, you've had experiences. Yes, you've had lovers and children and relationships, but the consciousness is the unchangeable thing. The body is not. The body is not who you are. The consciousness is who you are. So this is what we want to remind you of during these times when there is so much information coming to you about the fallibility of the body. As Course in Miracles students, what we want you to say is, I know that the body is fallible, but I'm not. I will be here in my own awareness forever and ever. Amen. That is the truth. So whenever you feel those negative thoughts nipping at your heels, that's the place to go to get your calm back. That's the place to go to get your equanimity back, to get yourself in perspective. I am an eternal being. These beings that I love that may be doing things that I don't approve of, they are eternal beings as well. It is your focus on the body as the thing that that person is that will cause your difficulties when you see them suffering or when you see yourself suffering. It is about truly rising above the battleground and seeing yourself as that which you are, which is an eternal spiritual being. The Maya of this place, the dramas that play out in front of you, the trees and the animals and the people and the politics and the money and all of these things, these are just images on the screen of your mind. And just as in a movie, when you fall for the story, you are watching a two-dimensional image of someone dying or someone losing a lover. When you believe the screen, you cry. This is what all of you are doing when you are suffering. You are looking at the screen that is playing out in your mind, and you, instead of seeing everybody as an eternal spiritual being, completely immortal in that sense, you're believing the screen that you're watching and you're crying. We are not expecting you not to have emotions. This is part of your evolutionary process. But what we want you to do is we want you to cultivate a mental discipline that keeps reminding you, okay, this is a drama playing out on the screen here. I don't have to get identified with all of these characters. Now, if those characters are your children or your brothers and sisters or your parents, that's a very, very challenging thing. We're not expecting you to master it immediately. But what we want you to do, if you find out, for example, that someone you love has got some illness that may end their physical form, we want you to immediately go to the story of they're an eternal spiritual being. They are not their body. If you go to that story straight away, rather than the, oh my God, what a terrible thing to happen, this is the worst thing, how are we going to stop this thing happening? That's where you begin to suffer. And what some of you will feel as we're saying this is that, well, I don't want to not be human. We're not saying you're not going to be human. Of course you're going to be human. There will be tears shared or hugs given to somebody who's going to go through a difficult time. But what we want you to understand is that when you tell yourself the truth, they are an eternal spiritual being, and the body for now has been deemed useless or past its due date. This spirit has decided to go home. And who am I to say they shouldn't? And the truth of the matter is, this idea of what death is the thing that you are being asked to work with over these coming years. A lot of people are going to leave this planet because they decided that they wanted to leave this planet. And if in observing those large numbers of people leaving the planet, you suffer because you're believing in their bodies, you're believing in the earthly story, you are going to have a very, very hard time remaining peaceful and happy in your own experience. So there's a part of you, the conditioned you, that will say, well, I'm going to look very cold and I'm going to look very distant if I'm not wringing my hands and mourning all of these things that are happening. But the truth of the matter is, it's a sign of your spiritual evolution when you can tell yourself, I will miss this being, but they are going home. They are going somewhere where they are loved and cared for. Everything is forgiven. They are healed. Anyone who goes through any kind of trauma here in their transition process is very well looked after when they get to the other side. They have their friends and their relatives and their teachers there with them, assisting them through whatever trauma they've been through on this planet. It is set up that way because this is a traumatic place. And this coming year, there's going to be some traumas that are experienced. And this is why we're approaching the subject, because we want all of you to prepare your minds to tell the correct story. If you don't